If your father announced at family dinner, "Tomorrow I'm selling your research," what would you do? I pulled out my phone right there at the table, and the number flashing on the screen was enough to flip the entire chessboard. Those who look down on you will always think you're weak until you sign something they'll never touch. At the end, a single no will slam shut every door of power they've built for themselves. My name is Natalie Keene, and I'm about to tell you how a single dinner on Sycamore Street changed everything, how the contract hidden under my dinner plate became the fuse that would detonate my family's empire of assumptions. Picture this mahogany dining table, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier Dad insisted on importing from Italy. The smell of Mom's rosemary chicken filling the room, the same recipe she's made every Sunday for 32 years, ever since she traded her CPA license for apron strings. My younger brother Derek sat across from me, scrolling through construction permits on his tablet. Already more Graham Keene's son than I'd ever be his daughter. "Put the devices away," Dad commanded, his voice carrying that particular tone that built Keene Build Co. from a 2-truck operation into Ohio's third-largest construction conglomerate. Graham Keene never asked. He declared. The tablet disappeared. Mom's hands folded neatly in her lap. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to hold its breath. That's when I saw it, the manila folder sliding across the polished wood toward me, pushed by fingers that had signed 1,000 deals, crushed 100 competitors, and never once attended my science fair victories. "We need to discuss your little project," he said, and the way he pronounced little made my teeth clench. 5 years of doctoral research, 18 months in a basement lab at Riverton Institute of Technology, and he still called it little. I opened the folder, legal documents, Keene Family Holdings LLC emblazoned across the top. My eyes caught phrases like technology transfer, commercialization rights, and family interest allocation. The numbers jumped out 70-30 split. Guess who got the smaller slice? "I don't understand," I lied, understanding perfectly. "It's simple." Graham leaned back, the chair creaking under his contractor's frame. "The family's investing in your research. We'll handle the business side, you're not cut out for that. Just need your signature to formalize everything." My phone buzzed against my thigh. I'd set it to silent, but not to still. Under the table, I glanced at the screen. An email from Paula Grady, RIT's Technology Transfer Director. "Urgent, multiple parties expressing interest. Preliminary valuations in 10-figure range if patent filed within window. Call me." 10 figures. That's billions with a B. "Natalie, your father's talking to you." Mom's voice, forever the peacekeeper, forever smoothing the edges Dad left jagged. "Sorry, I looked up, meeting Graham's steel gray eyes, the same eyes that once told 7-year-old me that science fairs were for boys who couldn't swing hammers. This 70% for the family. What exactly is the family contributing?" Derek snorted. "Seriously, Dad's connections alone." "I'm asking Dad." The room temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees. Graham Keene wasn't used to being questioned, especially not by the daughter who was supposed to be grateful for tuition payments and holiday dinners. "Everything," he said slowly, like explaining to a child. "The Keene name opens doors. My relationship with the zoning board, the State Development Fund, Senator Morrison's committee. You think your little quantum computers mean anything without infrastructure, without permits, without political backing. Little quantum computers, like I was playing with toy blocks in the basement. It's quantum error correction. Actually, specifically, maintaining coherence in quantum states at room temperature using a phase-locked photonic lattice." I kept my voice steady, professional. "And I achieved 12.7 seconds of stability yesterday. The previous world record was 3.4 seconds, requiring near absolute zero temperatures." "Numbers on a screen," Graham waved dismissively. "Wake me when it builds a shopping mall." That's when I understood, really understood. This wasn't about my research at all. This was about control, about Graham Keene not being able to stomach the idea that his disappointment of a daughter, the one who chose physics over the family business, who spent Christmas breaks in the lab instead of at client dinners, might actually build something beyond his comprehension or control. "Who else knows about this LLC?" I asked, flipping through the documents with practiced academic scrutiny. "Does it matter? Sign the papers?" "Natalie, don't make this complicated." My phone buzzed again, this time, a text from Professor Hollis Mercer, my mentor. "Department meeting moved. Graham Keene called the dean. Something about conflict of interest if you file patents independently. We need to talk." The bastard. He'd already started making calls, laying groundwork, building walls around my work like it was just another construction site to fence off. "I need to review this with legal counsel," I said, closing the folder. "Legal counsel," Derek laughed. "Nat, it's family. What do you need lawyers for?" "The same reason Dad brought a pre-drafted LLC agreement to Sunday dinner. Apparently." Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Natalie Marie." "It's fine, Elaine." Dad's voice could have frozen helium. "Let her play businesswoman. But remember, Natalie Araat's patent office closes in 6 days. Miss that window. And your breakthrough becomes public domain. Worthless. And I doubt the Institute will expedite anything with questions about conflicting interests hanging over the project." There it was. The trap. Laid bare. Submit to the family takeover or watch my work dissolve into academic vapor while administrative red tape mysteriously multiplied. Graham Keene had built an empire on knowing exactly which permits to delay, which inspections to expedite, which hands to shake, and which to squeeze. I stood up, phone in one hand, folder in the other. "Thank you for dinner. Mom, the chicken was perfect, as always." "You're not leaving," Dad stated, not asked, stated. I smiled. Then the first real smile I'd worn at this table in years. "Actually, I am. And Dad." That 10-figure interest Paula mentioned. That's baseline, conservative estimate. My little project could revolutionize everything from cryptography to drug discovery. IBM's quantum division alone would mortgage their headquarters for what I've achieved. His face darkened like thunderclouds over Lake Erie. "You don't walk away from this table without..." Without what? Without bowing. Without signing away 5 years of my life. Because you can't stand that I succeeded at something you can't understand. I tucked the folder under my arm. "Keep your LLC. Keep your 70% of nothing. Because that's what you'll have when I file tomorrow morning, nothing. Tomorrow's Monday. The patent office is operating on emergency scheduling for priority technologies. Funny thing about quantum computing, Dad, the Department of Defense considers it a matter of national security. They tend to expedite things when properly motivated." That was a bluff, mostly, but Graham Keene had taught me one useful thing in 32 years: never show your cards until the pot's already yours. I walked to the door, each step feeling like shedding 100 pounds of expectation. Behind me, I heard Derek asking what just happened. Mom murmuring about family unity, and Dad's breathing getting heavier. "Natalie," his voice stopped me at the threshold. "You walk out now. You're walking out on more than dinner. No more Keene family backing, no more safety net, no more..." "No more what?" Dad loves support. When exactly did those start? I left him with that. Stepping out into the Ohio evening where the air smelled like freedom and the faint ozone of an approaching storm, my phone was already ringing Paula, Hollis, probably others. The game was on, and Graham Keene had just discovered his biggest construction project, yet the wall between me and my life's work. Too bad for him I'd learned to build bridges in places he couldn't even imagine existed. My name is Natalie Keene, and this is how the war for my quantum revolution began. Not in a boardroom or a courtroom, but at a Sunday dinner table on Sycamore Street, with the contract that would change everything hidden under a plate of rosemary chicken. You want to know why I chose quantum physics over the family construction empire? Let me paint you a picture of growing up as Graham Keene's daughter in Granite Falls, Ohio, a town where the Keene name was stamped on half the buildings and whispered in the other half. The Keene Build Co. headquarters sat like a concrete crown jewel on Main Street, all glass and steel ambition. Every summer, Derek and I were expected to learn the business. Derek took to it like a duck-to-water hard hat tilted just like Dad's. clipboard in hand, barking orders at crews by age 15. I spent those summers sneaking physics textbooks onto construction sites, calculating load-bearing capacities not because I cared about building, but because I was fascinated by the forces involved. Force equals mass times acceleration, I'd mutter, watching cranes lift steel beams. Force equals getting off your ass and being useful, Dad would counter, snatching the book away. No daughter of mine is going to waste her life on theories while real work needs doing. Real work, that's what he called anything involving concrete, contracts, and cash flow. Everything else, especially anything requiring advanced degrees, was fantasy. Expensive fantasy, in my case. Mom tried to mediate, in her way. Elaine Keene had been valedictorian at Ohio State, graduated summa cum laude with an accounting degree. She'd been recruited by 3 Big Four firms before Graham swept her off her feet with promises of building an empire together. 28 days after their wedding, she was pregnant with Derek. 30 days after that, her CPA study materials went into storage. They're probably still there, gathering dust next to her dreams. Your father just wants what's best, she'd tell me, usually while doing the books for Keene Build Co. at the kitchen table, because God forbid Graham hire an actual accountant when he had a wife with the skills. He sees the world differently than you do. Yeah, he saw it in profit margins and square footage. I saw it in wave functions and probability clouds. The breaking point came during my senior year of high school. I'd been selected for the International Science Fair, not just the local one Dad had blown off 3 years running, but the international competition. My project on quantum entanglement in photosynthesis had caught the attention of a Columbia professor who'd flown out specifically to see it. Columbia wants to offer me early admission, I told them at dinner, hands shaking with excitement. Full scholarship. Professor Martinez says I could start research as a freshman, maybe even co-author papers. New York. Dad's fork stopped midway to his mouth. Absolutely not. But Dad, Ohio State has a perfectly good business program. Derek's already established connections there for you. I don't want to study business. The silence that followed could have choked a horse. Mom's eyes darted between us like she was watching a tennis match played with grenades. Derek just smirked, secure in his position as the child who never disappointed. What you want, Dad said slowly, each word a nail in the coffin of my childhood, is irrelevant. What matters is what's practical, what's profitable, what serves the family legacy. What if my legacy isn't about buildings? I shot back. What if it's about understanding the fundamental nature of reality? What if I could solve problems you can't even imagine? He laughed, actually laughed. Fundamental nature of reality. Listen to yourself. You sound like one of those hippie professors who never built anything real in their lives. You think quantum whatever is going to matter when the economy tanks, when people need homes, offices, infrastructure. Quantum computing could revolutionize. Could, might, maybe, he waved dismissively. I deal in concrete facts, Natalie, not fairy tales dressed up in math. That night, I filled out the Columbia application anyway, used the library computer so he couldn't track it, forged his signature on the financial aid documents, figured if he could forge Mom's dreams into quarterly reports, I could forge his name onto my future. When the acceptance came, all hell broke loose. Behind my back, he roared, Columbia letter crumpled in his fist, like a common thief, like some ungrateful, like someone who wants to live her own life, I finished. The ultimatum was simple Ohio State business program with family support, or Columbia physics on my own. No tuition help, no home to come back to, no keen family privileges. I chose physics. Those first years were brutal. Work-study programs, ramen dinners, textbooks borrowed or pirated because I couldn't afford new ones. But every equation I solved, every concept I mastered, felt like a small victory against Graham Keene's worldview. Mom would sneak me care packages, always with cash tucked between boxes of crackers. Never enough to raise Dad's suspicions, but enough to keep me going. She'd call from her car, voice hushed, asking about my research like she was conducting a covert operation, which, I suppose, She was. "I'm proud of you," she whispered once, after I'd published my first paper as an undergrad. "I never had the courage to—" She stopped, but we both knew how that sentence ended. Derek, meanwhile, was ascending the Keen Build Co ladder with predetermined ease. By the time I was defending my PhD dissertation at MIT, he was VP of Operations, engaged to the daughter of Ohio's biggest concrete supplier, the perfect son living the perfect life in the perfect box Dad had constructed for him. They didn't come to my PhD defense. Dad was too busy with a mall project. Mom was under the weather. Derek texted, "Congrats on the fancy paper. Let me know when it builds something." But Professor Hollis Mercer was there. He'd been recruited from MIT to RIT, bringing major NSF funding with him. "Quantum mechanics is the future," he told me over coffee afterward. "And you, Dr. Keen, are going to help build that future. How do you feel about Ohio?" I swore I'd never go back. "Not to go back," he smiled. "To go forward. Just happens to be in the same geographic location." So I returned to Ohio, but not to Granite Falls, not to Keen Build Co., to a basement lab in Rochester, where the only construction that mattered involved photons and probability waves, where success was measured in coherence times, not square footage, where my name on published papers meant more than my name on buildings ever could. For 5 years, I built my own empire, one made of light and logic gates instead of concrete and steel. Every breakthrough was a brick in the wall between who I was expected to be and who I chose to become. Every failed experiment taught me more than 1,000 successful construction projects ever could. "We miss you at family dinners," Mom would text occasionally. Translation: "Your father's pride is still wounded, but I wish you'd come home." "Lab work keeps me busy," I'd respond. Translation: "I'm building something he could never understand, and I'm not ready to shrink myself back into his shadow." Then came the breakthrough, the 12.7 seconds that changed everything. Suddenly, my fairy tales dressed up in math were worth billions. Suddenly, Graham Keen wanted to talk about family unity and shared success. Funny how quantum entanglement works, particles connected across impossible distances, affecting each other instantly, just like fathers and daughters, bound by blood and broken expectations, colliding again when the universe decides it's time. But here's what Graham Keen never understood about physics or daughters. We don't move backward, we only move forward, carrying all our momentum with us, ready to transfer that energy into something that changes the world. And now, with his contract under my arm and my phone buzzing with offers, I was about to show him exactly what kind of force equals mass times acceleration, when the mass is 5 years of rejection and the acceleration is straight up. The basement lab at RIT looked like a tech graveyard married a disco ball. Cables snaked across cracked linoleum, connecting Frankenstein equipment I'd bought from surplus auctions, sweet-talked from retiring professors, or built myself from components that fell off the back of the physics department truck, metaphorically speaking. This is where the magic happens. Paula Grady stood in my doorway that Monday morning. Designer heels clicking disapproval at the floor, power suit immaculate despite descending 3 flights of stairs that hadn't seen maintenance since the Clinton administration. "Magic is just science we don't understand yet," I replied, not looking up from the optical table where my phase-locked photonic lattice lived, a cathedral of mirrors, beam splitters, and nonlinear crystals that looked like chaos but sang in perfect harmony. Clark's third law. "Well, your magic has half of Silicon Valley calling my office." She picked her way through the obstacle course of equipment, holding a tablet like a shield. Intel, IBM, Google, 3 defense contractors I can't name, and something called Nova Quanta Holdings that's being very aggressive about exclusive rights. Nova Quanta. The name hit like ice water, but I kept my hands steady on the alignment screws. Never heard of them. Neither had I. Deep Dive shows they're a technology acquisition firm, specialize in buying promising quantum research and— She paused, choosing words carefully. Strategically managing its release to market. "You mean buying it and burying it to protect existing investments?" "I didn't say that." You didn't have to. I finally looked up, meeting her sharp brown eyes. Let me guess they're offering stupid money for exclusive rights, full patent transfer, and an NDA that would make the CIA jealous. Her perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. You've dealt with them before. No, but I know the type. I turned back to my setup, adjusting a polarizer with micron precision. Want to see what they're so eager to bury? Paula's professionalism cracked, replaced by genuine curiosity. The famous 12.7 seconds, absolutely. I powered up the system, lasers humming to life in sequence. The temperature readout held steady at 294 Kelvin room temperature, no exotic cooling required. That alone was worth billions in practical applications. Traditional quantum systems need near absolute zero to maintain coherence, I explained, hands dancing over controls. Thermal noise destroys quantum states faster than you can blink, but if you create a photonic lattice with specific phase-locking properties, the main laser fired, split into 1,000 coherent beams by the lattice structure. On the monitor, quantum states bloomed like digital flowers, their wave functions stable, coherent, refusing to collapse into classical certainty. Holy shit, Paula whispered, professionalism completely abandoned. The timer ran 5 seconds, 8, 10, 12. At 12.7 seconds, decoherence finally won, the quantum states collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. But for those precious seconds, we'd beaten the universe at its own game. The previous record at room temperature was 3.4 seconds, I said quietly. And that was with a system 10 times larger and 100 times more expensive. Paula was already calculating. I could see it in her eyes. Quantum encryption alone. Forget encryption. Think drug discovery, material science, AI optimization, any problem that classical computers choke on. This could solve. We're not talking about incremental improvement. This is the difference between a calculator and a supercomputer. Your patent draft. She was back in business mode, but her hands shook slightly. I pulled up the document on my laptop, 150 pages of technical specifications, implementation details, and careful claims crafting. Complete, but I need... The lights flickered, then died. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in hellish red. My equipment, thankfully on separate power with battery backup, kept humming. Scheduled maintenance, I asked, though I already knew the answer. Paula's phone lit up with texts. No, but suddenly there's an electrical inspection happening. Safety concerns about unauthorized equipment in the basement. Graham Keene's first shot across the bow. Cut power, create delays, manufacture problems until I missed the patent window or came crawling back to sign his papers. How long to file? I asked. Full review process, even expedited, takes 48 hours minimum. But Natalie... She hesitated. The provost's office is asking questions about potential conflicts of interest. Your father's name is on several building projects here. Of course it is, I laughed, bitter as burnt coffee. RIT's new engineering wing, Keene Build Co., the parking structure Keene Build Co., and I bet there's a nice donation check somewhere with promises of more if they play ball. I can't comment on donor relationships, Paula said carefully, but I can tell you that patent filings from faculty under investigation get held indefinitely. The trap was elegant, I had to admit. Dad had spent Sunday night and Monday morning pulling every string, calling every favor. By now, half the administration probably thought I was trying to steal university property for family gain. I need Hollis, I said, already packing critical components. And we need a clean room that isn't about to be condemned. Professor Hollis Mercer answered on the first ring. Already ahead of you, my lab. 10 minutes. Bring everything that matters. The department won't. I'm retiring in 6 months. Natalie, what are they going to do? Fire me faster. Besides, his voice carried a grin. I've been waiting 30 years to tell certain administrators exactly what I think of their donor relations policies. Moving the critical equipment felt like evacuating children from a burning building. Each component carefully wrapped, labeled, transported through corridors where every passing administrator might be an enemy. every locked door a new obstacle. Hollis met us at his lab, pristine, well-funded. Everything mine wasn't. "Your father called me this morning," he said without preamble. "Offered to fund a new research center, my name on the building, full autonomy, 7-figure annual budget. All I had to do was convince you to be reasonable about family interests." My hands stilled on the optical breadboard. Hollis. "I told him to perform an anatomically impossible act with his checkbook." He grinned, age spots crinkling around blue eyes that had seen every dirty trick in academic politics. "Then I called my patent attorney. We're filing today. My name as co-inventor to sidestep any conflict claims against you. Standard partnership, you retain majority rights, but it shields the filing from administrative interference." "You'd do that." My voice cracked slightly. After years of family betrayal, unexpected loyalty hit harder than any attack. "Natalie, I've published 300 papers, won every award that matters. And what do I have to show for it? Equations gathering dust in journals nobody reads." He gestured at my equipment. "But this is real. This changes the world. And I'll be damned if I let some construction mogul with delusions of grandeur bury it, because his daughter had the audacity to be smarter than him." We worked through the red-lit morning, recalibrating the setup in Hollis's lab. Paula fielded increasingly frantic calls from Nova Quanta, their offers climbing from offensive to obscene. Each time she said no, another administrative hurdle mysteriously appeared. "Health and Safety wants to inspect Hollis's lab now," she reported around noon. "And the Conflict of Interest Committee is convening an emergency session." "Stall them," Hollis ordered. "Misfiled paperwork, scheduling conflicts, whatever it takes. We just need 6 more hours." 6 hours to replicate the results, document everything, and file patents that would change quantum computing forever. 6 hours before Graham Keene's influence strangled my life's work in its crib. I looked at my photonic lattice, rebuilt and realigned in this new space, ready to sing its quantum song again. In the reflection of the polished mirrors, I saw my mother's eyes staring back, brilliant, trapped, but finally fighting back. "Run it again," I said, "and this time, let's document everything, every photon, every phase lock, every beautiful quantum moment. If we're going to war with Graham Keene, we're going in with perfect ammunition." The lasers fired, reality bent, and for 12.7 seconds, the universe danced to our tune. Somewhere across town, my father was learning that all the concrete in the world couldn't build a wall high enough to contain quantum probability. And we were just getting started. Tuesday morning arrived with a registered letter that felt heavier than my entire optical table. The courier insisted on a signature, photographed me holding it, and practically sprinted away like he'd just delivered a bomb. In a way, he had. "Keene Family Holdings, LLC, in joint venture with Nova Quanta Holdings, hereby notifies Dr. Natalie Keene of intent to pursue commercial development of quantum stabilization technologies developed under familial auspices." Familial auspices. I read aloud to Paula and Hollis in the conference room we'd commandeered as our war room. They're actually claiming my family funded the research. Paula's manicured nails clicked against her tablet as she scrolled through attached documents. It gets better. They filed a preliminary claim stating that discussions of quantum mechanics at family gatherings constitute intellectual property contribution. There's an affidavit from your brother claiming you explained your theories at Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. I told him quantum entanglement wasn't magic when he asked if I was learning to teleport. I slammed the letter down. That's like claiming you contributed to NASA because you pointed at the moon. "They don't need to be right," Hollis said quietly, his years of academic politics showing. "They just need to create enough smoke for the university to freeze everything while lawyers sort it out. By then, the patent window closes, other researchers publish similar work, and my breakthrough becomes worthless." I finished, seeing the strategy clearly now. Classic Nova Quanta playbook. If you can't buy it, bury it in legal quicksand. Paula's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and paled. Speaking of quicksand, Jasper Whitcomb just walked into the provost's office, Nova Quanta's CEO. In person. Jasper Whitcomb. I'd Googled him after Paula first mentioned the company, MIT dropout, who'd made his fortune identifying disruptive technologies and ensuring they disrupted nothing by buying and shelving them. His company was where innovation went to die, preserved in legal formaldehyde, while established players continued profiting from inferior solutions. He's offering the university a partnership, Paula continued reading her source's texts. $20 million for a new quantum research center, with Nova Quanta holding right of first refusal on all developments. Let me guess, I said. Contingent on resolving the current dispute in a way that acknowledges family interests. You're learning. The beautiful trap was closing. Dad provided the local leverage. Whitcomb brought the checkbook, and together they'd turn my breakthrough into a bargaining chip in their game of corporate poker. We need to file today, Hollis said, before they can— File what? I interrupted. A patent with my name on it that they'll immediately challenge, they'll get an injunction, and we'll spend 2 years in court while the technology becomes obsolete. So what do we do? Paula asked. Roll over. I stood, pacing to the window. Outside, students walked between classes, oblivious to the war being waged over photons and phase locking. One girl carried a laptop covered in physics equation stickers. She looked like me 10 years ago, brilliant, driven, and completely unaware of how the real world would try to dim her light. No, I said finally. We don't roll over. We flip the board. I turned back to them, the plan crystallizing like quantum states snapping into focus. Paula, what makes a patent strong? Clear documentation of invention, novel applications, and— Her eyes widened. Detailed implementation instructions, the how-to, that proves you actually built it, not just theorized it. Exactly, and what has Nova Quanta never seen? The actual setup, the 12.7 seconds of stable coherence. They're betting everything on paperwork and legal pressure because they think that's all that matters. I smiled, feeling like I'd found a loophole in reality itself. Hollis, how do you feel about hosting a small demonstration, very exclusive? Just a few key quantum researchers who happen to be in town for that conference next week. He caught on immediately. The International Quantum Computing Symposium, 300 of the field's brightest minds, all here in Rochester. If we showed them working room temperature quantum coherence, every major lab in the world would be racing to replicate it, Paula breathed. Nova Quanta couldn't buy them all, and with multiple independent confirmations, my patent becomes irrefutable. Prior art, established by the entire quantum physics community. I pulled out my phone. But we need to move fast, and we need to be smart about who we invite. I may have some ideas, Hollis said, his grin purely predatory. Did you know the program committee chair owes me 3 favors time to collect? We spent the next 6 hours in frantic preparation. Not just technical, that was the easy part. The real work was human engineering, which researchers to invite, what to reveal, how to ensure word spread without tipping off Nova Quanta or Dad. Invitations sent, Paula reported, framed as an informal Tuesday evening session. Promising developments in room temperature quantum systems, boring enough to avoid attention, intriguing enough to ensure attendance. Security? I asked. Campus police think it's a standard academic presentation, but I may have mentioned the equipment is worth several million and extremely fragile. She smiled wickedly. They'll keep the riffraff out. My phone rang. Dad. I let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker. Natalie, this nonsense has gone far enough. Mr. Whitcomb is offering very generous terms. The family gets 60%, you get 40%, plus a guaranteed position at Nova Quanta. That's more than fair for research you couldn't have done without the keen name opening doors. Call me back. Don't make me escalate this. Escalate, Hollis snorted. What's he going to do? Cement your lab door shut. Another call, this time from Derek. Nat, Dad's seriously pissed. He's calling in every favor. Just sign the papers. 40% of billions is still billions. Don't be stupid. Stupid. Like choosing physics was stupid. Like believing in my work was stupid. like thinking a Keen could be anything other than concrete and contracts was stupid. "One more call to make," I said, pulling up a contact I hadn't used in years. Natalie. Mom answered on the first ring, voice hushed. "I can't talk long. Your father." "Mom, do you still have your CPA license?" Silence. Then, barely a whisper, "It's expired. But why?" "Because in about 18 hours, I'm going to need someone I trust to review some very interesting contracts. Contracts worth approximately $1 billion. Think you might be interested in brushing up on your skills." The silence stretched longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice carried something I hadn't heard in decades steel. "I'll need to renew my license. That takes—" "Paula can expedite it. Emergency consultancy provision. Your father will—" "Mom," I interrupted gently. "What Dad will or won't do stopped being your problem the moment he tried to steal from his own daughter. This is about what you want to do." Another pause. Then, "Send me the documents. I'll be ready." As I hung up, Paula was staring at me. "You're not just fighting for your patent anymore, are you?" "No," I admitted. "I'm fighting for every brilliant woman who got told her dreams were less important than someone else's empire. My breakthrough is just the beginning." Hollis raised his coffee mug in a mock toast. "To quantum rebellion." "To quantum rebellion," Paula and I echoed. Outside, the sun was setting over Rochester, painting the sky in shades of impossible pink and gold. In 12 hours, the physics community would witness something that would rewrite textbooks. And Graham Keen would learn that sometimes, the most powerful forces in the universe come in packages he'd never bothered to understand. The war room we established in Hollis's conference room looked like a cross between a law firm and a hacker's den. Pizza boxes towered next to legal briefs, while 3 laptops displayed everything from patent databases to real-time email monitoring. Paula had called in her best IP attorney, Sandra Volkov, a woman who'd cut her teeth defending university research from corporate raiders. "First rule of patent warfare," Sandra said, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses as she reviewed our documentation. "Assume everything you've ever written, said, or thought about your research will be weaponized against you. Every email, every lab notebook, every casual conversation." "Comforting," I muttered, pulling up my laboratory information management system. 5 years of meticulous records glowed on the screen timestamps, equipment logs, supply orders, failure reports, success metrics. "How's this for documentation?" Sandra leaned in, scrolling through entries. Her expression shifted from skeptical to impressed. "You timestamp everything." "Paranoid habit from grad school. My advisor used to say, if it's not documented, it didn't happen." Sandra finished, smiling for the first time. "I like your advisor. This is gold. Every equipment purchase traced to grants, not family money, every breakthrough logged with witness signatures. Even your failures are time-stamped, showing the actual development process." "Speaking of witnesses," Hollis interjected, "we need to talk about the NDA strategy." Paula pulled up a document she'd been crafting. "Standard non-disclosure for tonight's demonstration, but with a twist, we're creating multiple versions." "Watermarking," I realized. "Each version has slightly different technical details. If anything leaks, we know exactly who leaked it." Paula's grin was sharp. "Version A mentions crystalline lattice structures. Version B says crystal-based lattice arrays. Version C uses lattice crystalline matrices. Same meaning, different fingerprints." "That's devious." Sandra looked genuinely impressed. "And completely legal. I'm stealing this for future cases." My phone buzzed with our 15th call from Nova Quanta's legal team. I let it ring through to voicemail, then played it on speaker. "Dr. Keen, this is Harrison Blackwood from Whitmore, Krensky, and Associates, representing Nova Quanta Holdings. We're prepared to file for an immediate injunction unless you respond to our good faith offers. You have 1 hour." "Good faith," Sandra scoffed. "They wouldn't recognize good faith if it achieved quantum coherence in their coffee." "Can they actually get an injunction?" I asked. They can file for one. Whether they get it depends on the judge and the evidence. But here's the thing. Sandra pulled up a legal database. Nova Quanta has a pattern. 17 similar cases in the past 5 years. They always file in the Eastern District of Texas, where patent trolls get friendly hearings. But you haven't published yet, haven't sold anything, haven't even filed the patent. They're bluffing with a pair of twos. Unless my father's involvement gives them a stronger hand, I pointed out. About that, Paula looked up from her phone. I've been doing deep background on the Keen Nova Quanta connection. Guess who sits on Nova Quanta's advisory board? She turned her screen toward us. There, buried in a subsidiary filing, was Senator Morrison, the same senator Dad always bragged about having in his pocket. So it's not just business, Hollis said quietly. It's political. It's worse than that. I connected the dots aloud. Dad doesn't just want my research. He's already promised it to Whitcomb in exchange for what board position political backing for Derek's future campaigns. Does it matter? Sandra asked. We focus on what we can prove, not their motivations. A knock interrupted us. Mom stood in the doorway, looking simultaneously out of place and exactly where she belonged. She'd traded her usual suburban camouflage for a sharp business suit I hadn't seen in 20 years. I believe you need a forensic accountant, she said, setting down a briefcase that looked older than Derek. I may be a bit rusty, but numbers don't lie, unlike certain construction company executives. Mrs. Keene, Paula started. Elaine, please. Mrs. Keene is what I've been for too long. She pulled out a laptop ancient enough to be in a museum. Now, let's talk about establishing financial chains of evidence. For the next 3 hours, we built our fortress of facts. Equipment purchase orders cross-referenced with grant disbursements, emails establishing development timelines, lab access logs showing solo late-night sessions where breakthroughs happened, a paper trail so comprehensive it could choke a horse or a corporate lawyer. There, Mom said finally, leaning back. Every dollar accounted for. Not a cent of Keene money touched this research, although… She paused, a strange smile playing at her lips. I did find something interesting in the family trust documents. Mom, did you know your grandmother left you an educational fund, specifically earmarked for advanced scientific studies, locked until you turned 25 with Graham as trustee? She pulled up a document. He never mentioned it. Did he? The quarterly statements show the fund paid out to… Interesting. Keene Build Co. for administrative expenses. He stole my education fund. The betrayal hit fresh, even after everything. Borrowed, technically, with interest, compound interest. Mom's fingers flew over calculator keys. At standard fiduciary rates, he owes the trust approximately $847,000. Sandra whistled low. Breach of fiduciary duty. That's criminal, not civil. We're not going there, I said quickly. I don't want him in jail. I just want him gone. Then we use it as leverage, Sandra agreed. Speaking of which, it's almost showtime. Final preparations. We moved like a well-oiled machine. Hollis confirmed the demonstration space was secure. Paula checked in with our invited physicists, 17 confirmed, including 2 Nobel laureates who'd flown in early for the conference. I ran final calibrations on the equipment we'd moved to the demonstration room, my hands steady despite the stakes. NDA versions distributed according to our list, Paula reported. Dr. Yamamoto gets version A, Professor Lindqvist gets version B, and so on. If anything leaks to Nova Quanta, we'll know exactly who sold us out. I attached the last fiber optic cable. Though honestly, I'm betting on Professor Hutchinson. He's been bitter ever since Hollis scooped him on superconducting qubit arrays. Natalie. Mom appeared at my elbow, voice soft. I'm proud of you. Mom. No. Let me say this. I've watched Graham try to shrink you for 32 years. Watched him do the same to me. But you didn't let him. You grew anyway. Grew beyond anything he could imagine or control. She squeezed my shoulder. Whatever happens tonight, you've already won. My phone rang. Unknown number. but I recognized the voice immediately. Dr. Keen Jasper Whitcomb. I'm sitting in a rather disappointing meeting with your university administration. They seem to think you're planning some sort of demonstration tonight. I do hope you're not about to do something impulsive. Mr. Whitcomb, I said pleasantly, I'm about to do something quantum. Whether that's impulsive depends entirely on your frame of reference. Clever, but cleverness won't protect you from litigation. My lawyers are about to become very busy explaining why their client systematically suppresses innovation. I cut him off. See you at the demonstration. Oh wait, you weren't invited. How impulsive of me. I hung up before he could respond. Around me, my makeshift team, my real family burst into applause. Places, everyone, Hollis called out. The future waits for no one. As we filed out toward the demonstration room, I caught sight of our reflection in a window, a physics professor near retirement, a technology transfer director in designer heels, a corporate lawyer turned academic defender, an accountant reclaiming her power, and a quantum researcher about to change the world. Not bad for a girl who was supposed to be grateful for scraps from the family table. The phase-locked photonic lattice awaited, ready to sing its revolutionary song, and this time, the whole physics world would be listening. The clock showed 11:47 p.m. when Sandra burst through the door, hair wild, laptop clutched like a lifeline. They filed Eastern District of Texas, just like I predicted. The injunction hearing is set for 72 hours from now. 72 hours. I looked up from the patent application I'd been polishing for the past 6 straight hours. The demonstration is in 8 hours. They can't stop something that's already happened. They're not trying to stop the demonstration, Sandra said grimly. They're trying to stop you from filing the patent based on it. Look, she spun her laptop around. Claim of joint invention. Breach of implied contract. Misappropriation of trade secrets. They're throwing everything at the wall. Trade secrets, Hollis laughed bitterly. What trade secrets? Graham Keen wouldn't know a photon from a potato. Doesn't matter, Mom said from her corner, surrounded by financial documents. It's about creating doubt, making the patent office hesitate. She looked up, reading glasses perched on her nose. Graham's specialty, create enough chaos that everyone begs for a settlement just to make it stop. Paula's phone lit up with notifications. The tech blogs got wind of something. Mystery quantum demo at RIT tonight. Nova Quanta files suspicious last-minute lawsuit. We're trending on physics Twitter. Physics Twitter is a thing, Mom asked. Everything's a thing on Twitter, I muttered, adding another citation to my patent claims. Sandra, what's our window? If we file within 24 hours of the demonstration, with signed affidavits from attendees confirming what they saw, we establish undeniable priority. The injunction won't matter if the patent's already in the system. Then we don't sleep. I stood, stretching muscles that had been locked over keyboards for too long. Mom, I need every financial record ready. Paula, media strategy for after the demo. Hollis. Already on it, he interrupted. Phone pressed to his ear. Yes, Director Chen. I understand the facility is supposed to be closed, but this is critical research and what? Since when do we need board approval for after-hours demonstrations? We all knew since when. Since Graham Keen made another phone call. Right, I said, thinking fast. Plan B. Where else can we... My lab? A voice said from the doorway. Professor Yamamoto stood there, one of our invited guests who'd arrived early. I heard about your difficulties. My quantum optics lab is available, less sophisticated than Professor Mercer's, but sufficient for a demonstration. Kenji, Hollis breathed, you don't know what you're risking, the politics. I know exactly what I'm risking, Yamamoto said firmly. I also know what happens when we let money silence science. Move your equipment. My graduate students will help. What followed was the most surreal parade in RIT history. 17 physicists, 5 grad students, 1 technology transfer director in heels, a corporate lawyer, and a recently relicensed accountant, all carrying pieces of quantum computing equipment through darkened hallways like academic ninjas. If someone films this, we're internet gold, Paula whispered, carefully balancing a mirror assembly. Focus, I hissed back, though I was fighting not to laugh. The absurdity of it all sneaking around our own university like teenagers breaking curfew, all to demonstrate something that would reshape computing forever. We reached Yamamoto's lab without incident, unless you counted Dr. Lindqvist nearly dropping a critical beam splitter when campus security walked by. 2 hours to recalibrate, realign, and pray the slightly different environmental conditions wouldn't affect the demonstration. Natalie, Mom appeared at my elbow as I fine-tuned the phase-locking mechanism. I found something else in the financial records. Nova Quanta made a large payment to Keen Buildco 6 months ago, listed as consulting fees. 6 months ago. I thought back. That's when I published the preliminary results in Journal of Quantum Physics. The ones that suggested room temperature coherence was possible but didn't reveal how. So Graham's been planning this since then, playing the long game. She looked tired but determined. He sold you out before he even knew what you'd achieved. My hands stilled on the controls. 6 months of family dinners where he'd known. 6 months of him asking casual questions about my research while already counting Nova Quanta's money. Doesn't matter now, I said, forcing my voice steady. What matters is the next 8 hours. The demonstration attendees began arriving at 6 a.m., looking equal parts intrigued and confused by the venue change. Sandra stationed herself at the door with NDAs are beautiful, watermarked, track every leak NDAs. Professor Hutchinson, she said smoothly as the bitter physicist arrived, you'll be signing version C. Please initial every page. I watched from my control station as the room filled with some of the brightest minds in quantum physics, people whose papers I'd memorized, whose theories I'd built upon, whose approval I'd craved since grad school, and they were here to see my work. Ladies and gentlemen, Hollis called the room to order. Thank you for joining us at this admittedly unusual hour and location. What you're about to see will require you to reconsider fundamental assumptions about quantum decoherence and thermal noise. Dr. Keen. I stepped forward, my hands surprisingly steady. The challenge of quantum computing has always been maintaining coherence, keeping quantum states stable long enough to perform calculations. Traditional approaches require temperatures near absolute zero. Today, I'll show you sustained coherence at room temperature. No speeches about family or struggle, just science, pure, elegant, revolutionary science. I powered up the system. Lasers hummed to life, the photonic lattice creating its intricate pattern. On the monitoring screens, quantum states began forming, holding, refusing to collapse into classical chaos. 5 seconds, I announced, voice carrying over the hushed room. 8, 10. At 12 seconds, Dr. Yamamoto actually gasped. When we hit 12.7 and held for a fraction more before decoherence set in, the room erupted. Again, someone shouted. Run it again. 3 more times I demonstrated the effect. 3 more times. Reality bent to our will for those precious seconds. By the 3rd run, half the physicists were taking photos, the other half furiously scribbling calculations. The implications, Dr. Lindqvist breathed. Pharmaceutical modeling alone. Cryptography will need to be completely reimagined, another voice added. Material science could advance by decades overnight. Professor Yamamoto contributed. I let them talk. Theory build on theory. Imagination catching fire from the spark of possibility. In the corner, Paula was already fielding calls from journalists who'd somehow gotten word. Mom was documenting everything, creating an unassailable record of this moment. Then I saw him, not in person. Graham Keen would never lower himself to skulk in hallways, but on the local newsfeed Paula had pulled up on her phone. He was standing outside the courthouse, Jasper Whitcomb beside him, announcing their lawsuit to protect family interests in technological developments. Dr. Keen? Professor Hutchinson approached, and I tensed. But his expression wasn't bitter anymore. It was awed. Would you consider collaboration? My lab has been working on error correction algorithms that might extend your coherence time even further. Before I could answer, Sandra's phone rang. She listened, face darkening, then hung up. "They've expedited the injunction hearing," she announced. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. They're claiming immediate irreparable harm if you file the patent." The room fell silent. Everyone here understood what this meant. File now and risk legal retaliation. Wait, and risk someone else publishing first. "File it," Dr. Yamamoto said firmly. "We'll all sign affidavits. Let them try to dispute 17 witness testimonies." 18, Professor Hutchinson corrected. "I may have had my differences with Hollis, but I won't watch good science be buried by corporate greed." One by one, they agreed. The greatest minds in quantum physics, standing with me against the machine that would steal and silence innovation. "Then we have work to do," I said, voice stronger than I felt. 24 hours to change the world. As the room burst into action, some drafting affidavits, others planning collaborative papers, still others calling their own universities to share the news, I caught Mom's eye. She smiled, and for the first time in my life, I saw her not as Graham Keene's wife, but as Elaine the mathematician, the woman who'd chosen family over formulas but never stopped believing in the power of truth elegantly expressed. "Let's go make history," she said. And with 17 witnesses, watermarked NDAs, and 12.7 seconds of quantum stability, we were about to do exactly that. The RIT main auditorium could hold 800 people. By 2 p.m. Thursday, every seat was filled, with more crowding the aisles. What started as an academic demonstration had exploded into the physics event of the decade. "I've got MIT, Stanford, and Caltech on hold," Paula whispered, juggling 3 phones. "They all want to know if you're considering positions." "Tell them to watch the show first," I replied, adjusting the portable version of my setup on stage. We'd moved from Yamamoto's lab to the main stage after the university president, suddenly very interested in supporting groundbreaking research, had overruled whatever objections Graham's connections had raised. The audit trail had spoken louder than construction money. In the 3rd row, I spotted Graham and Jasper Whitcomb, legal team flanking them like corporate bodyguards. They'd tried to get an emergency injunction that morning. The judge, after reviewing 17 Nobel-worthy physicists' affidavits, had essentially laughed them out of court. "Come back when you can explain quantum mechanics to me," Judge Harrison had said. Until then, I see no basis for restricting academic discourse. Now they sat here, watching their scheme unravel in real time. "Ladies and gentlemen," the university president began, practically glowing with reflected glory, "today RIT makes history, us." I tuned out his grandstanding, focusing on my equipment. This wasn't the carefully controlled environment of a lab. This was public, messy, real, one shot to show the world what we'd built. Mom sat in the front row, fingers flying over her laptop. She'd spent the night analyzing Nova Quanta's pattern of acquisitions, building a damning portrait of innovation assassination. That data was already seeding through physics blogs and tech journals, painting context around today's demonstration. Dr. Natalie Keene. Applause thundered as I took the podium. In the crowd, I saw faces from MIT, from conferences, from journal editorial boards, my entire professional world, watching. "Quantum computing," I began, "has always been a promise waiting for room temperature. Today, that wait ends." I launched into the technical explanation, but accessibly, this wasn't just for physicists anymore. Journalists scribbled notes, cameras rolled, and in the 3rd row, Jasper Whitcomb's frown deepened with every word. "Before we begin the demonstration," I continued, "I should address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the patent troll." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Nova Quanta Holdings has filed claims suggesting this work was somehow derived from family resources. I'd like to clarify the only family contribution to this research was years of being told it was worthless. Turns out, negative motivation is still motivation. Real laughter now. Graham's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. "But I believe in transparency, so let's examine the evidence." I clicked to my first slide. Here's every equipment purchase, traced to NSF grants. Here's lab access logs, showing development timeline. And here, I clicked again, is NovaQuanta's pattern of buying and burying quantum technologies. The slide showed Mom's analysis: 23 acquisitions, 0 products brought to market, a graveyard of innovation worth billions in suppressed progress. Objection. Whitcomb stood, his lawyer grabbing his arm too late. This is defamation. This is publicly available data, I responded calmly. Would you like to explain why none of those acquired technologies ever saw commercialization, or should we ask Dr. Rashidi, whose quantum encryption protocol you bought and shelved? He's here in row 12. A murmur ran through the crowd as Dr. Rashidi stood and nodded. I'd invited him specially, along with 6 other NovaQuanta victims Paula had tracked down. Enough talk, someone called from the audience. Show us the 12 seconds. 12.7, I corrected with a grin. Let's begin. I powered up the system. The auditorium lights dimmed, leaving only the glow of laser paths and monitoring screens. The familiar hum filled the space, but amplified by 800 held breaths. Initiating phase lock, I announced. Establishing photonic lattice, quantum states forming, and... The timer started. 1 second, 2, 5. At 8 seconds, even the journalists had stopped typing. At 10, someone whispered, "Holy shit," loud enough for the microphones to catch. At 12.7, when coherence finally collapsed, the auditorium exploded. But I wasn't done. That was the baseline, I said over the noise. Now, let me show you what happens when we apply Professor Hutchinson's error correction algorithms, developed just this morning. Hutchinson stood and bowed as I triggered the modified sequence. This time, we hit 15.3 seconds. 15 seconds of room temperature quantum coherence, I announced. With optimization, we project 30 seconds within 6 months, a minute within a year, and then... I clicked to my final slide, not data or graphs, but possibilities. Drug discovery accelerated 1,000-fold. Encryption unbreakable by classical means. AI training that currently takes months reduced to hours. Climate modeling accurate enough to save coastlines. Traffic optimization that could return years of human life currently lost to gridlock. And then, I finished quietly, we changed the world. In the 3rd row, Jasper Whitcomb was frantically typing on his phone, but I'd saved the best for last. "Mr. Whitcomb," I called out, "you seem concerned. Perhaps you're worried about your investment. The one where you paid Keen Build Co. 6 months ago for advance information about my research." His fingers froze. Every camera in the room swung toward him. "I wonder," I continued conversationally, "if your investors know about that payment, or about the senator who arranged this partnership, the same senator who's been pushing for restrictions on quantum research funding restrictions that would conveniently benefit companies that already hold quantum patents, companies like NovaQuanta." "You can't prove," Whitcomb started. "Actually," Mom stood up, every inch the CPA she'd trained to be. Financial records are beautiful things. They tell stories. Like how NovaQuanta's acquisition budget always spikes just before key legislation is proposed, or how Keen Build Co.'s government contracts doubled after that 6-month-ago payment. "This is a setup," Graham finally exploded, shooting to his feet. "My own daughter, manipulated by these academics." "Dad," I interrupted, and the word fell like a stone into sudden silence. "The only manipulation here was yours. You tried to steal what you couldn't understand. You tried to bury what you couldn't control, and you failed." I pulled out the watermarked NDAs Sandra had prepared. By the way, these NDAs everyone signed, they included specific technical details. Version C, which went to Professor Hutchinson, mentioned crystalline matrices, the same phrase that appeared in NovaQuanta's legal filing this morning, word for word. Hutchinson stood, face red. I would never." "No, you wouldn't," I agreed. "But someone on your team would, someone who thought a quick payday was worth selling out science." I clicked to the next slide, showing email headers. "Your graduate assistant, Marcus Webb, who's been corresponding with Nova Quanta for weeks, using your access credentials. The revelation rippled through the crowd. Hutchinson looked stricken, then furious. Academic betrayal cut deeper than corporate espionage ever could. Here's what happens now, I announced. The patent application was filed at 6 a.m. this morning, with full documentation and 17 witness affidavits. Nova Quanta's claims are preempted, their mole is exposed, and their pattern of innovation suppression is now public record. I looked directly at Graham and Whitcomb. Gentlemen, you have two choices. Walk away now, or stay for the Q&A where Dr. Rashidi and others will share their Nova Quanta experiences. Your call. Whitcomb was already moving, his legal team scrambling after him, but Graham stayed frozen, staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. 40%, he said finally. You could have had 40% of billions. I have 100% of my integrity, I replied. Turns out that's worth more. He left then. Shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen. Derek wasn't with him. My brother had chosen to stay away entirely, smart enough to distance himself from the sinking ship. As the Q&A began tough questions from brilliant minds, the kind of interrogation that forged truth from theory, I felt a hand on my shoulder, Mom, smiling with tears in her eyes. Your grandmother would be so proud, she whispered. The woman who left you that education fund? She was a chemist, first woman in her department. They tried to bury her work, too. What happened? She published anyway, under a male pseudonym, but she published. Sodium ion channels her research laid groundwork that won someone else a Nobel 20 years later. Mom squeezed my shoulder. But you're putting your real name on your revolution. No more hiding, no more stolen credit. As I turned back to field questions about practical applications, timeline to market, collaboration opportunities, I thought about all the buried brilliance, all the innovations killed in boardrooms, all the dreams traded for safety or stolen for profit. Not this time, not my work, not anymore. The future was quantum, and it was going to be transparent. The moment Whitcomb fled the auditorium, Sandra's phone erupted. She answered, listened for 10 seconds, then smiled like a shark scenting blood. That was fast, she announced to our hastily assembled war council in the green room. Nova Quanta's board just called an emergency meeting. Apparently, someone live-streamed your presentation, and their stock is in freefall. How bad? Paula asked, already pulling up financial sites. Down 30% and dropping. Turns out investors don't like learning their innovation company is actually an innovation graveyard. Sandra's fingers flew over her tablet. And it gets better. The SEC just announced they're opening an investigation into Nova Quanta's acquisition practices. Through the door, we could hear the Q&A continuing. Hollis fielding questions while I took 5 minutes to breathe. But breathing was hard when your whole world was shifting at quantum speeds. They're going to retaliate, Mom said quietly. She knew Graham better than anyone. Cornered rats bite hardest. As if summoned by her words. My phone rang. Unknown number. But I recognized the voice immediately, Harrison Blackwood, Nova Quanta's chief counsel. Dr. Shakeen, you've made a serious mistake. We're prepared to file charges of corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and tortious interference with... Mr. Blackwood, I interrupted, putting him on speaker for witnesses. Are you seriously calling to threaten me right now, while the SEC is announcing an investigation into your company? That's a misunderstanding that will be cleared up shortly. What won't be cleared up is the damage you've done to our legitimate business interests. Sandra grabbed the phone. Counselor, this is Sandra Volkov, representing Dr. Keene. I'm recording this call. Please continue explaining how exposing publicly available information constitutes espionage. I'm sure the Bar Association will find it fascinating. The line went dead. They're panicking, Paula observed. Good. Panicked people make mistakes. Through the door, I heard applause. The Q&A was ending, but the real work was just beginning. I stepped back into the auditorium to find organized chaos, researchers exchanging contact information, journalists cornering anyone with a PhD, and 3 different university presidents trying to subtly recruit me. But I was looking for one person. Graham stood by the exit, looking older than his 61 years. The construction king who'd built an empire on concrete and connections, brought low by photons and phase locking he'd never bothered to understand. "We need to talk," he said as I approached. "Do we, your buddy Whitcomb, just threaten to sue me for everything from espionage to jaywalking?" "Whitcomb's not my buddy." He seemed to deflate further. "He was a means to an end, a way to finally make you see that this family needs to stick together, pool our resources." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. This was never about family. This was about control, about you not being able to stomach that your disappointment daughter succeeded at something you couldn't monetize." "That's not—" He paused, struggling with words in a way I'd never seen. Graham Keene always knew exactly what to say to close a deal, but this wasn't a deal. This was his daughter, and he'd never learned that language. "You want to know the ironic part?" I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "If you'd just once shown up to a science fair, asked about my research without dismissing it, maybe even pretended to be proud, I'd have gladly shared everything. Hell, I'd have named the patent after you, the Keene Quantum Coherence Protocol. How's that for family legacy?" Something broke in his expression. For a split second, I saw not Graham Keene, the construction mogul, but a man realizing he'd spent 32 years building the wrong empire. Then his phone rang. He glanced at it, and the moment shattered. "It's Morrison, the senator. I have to—" "Of course you do." I turned away. "Goodbye, Dad." I walked back to my team, leaving him to his connections and calculations, but I'd only made it 3 steps when chaos erupted. Breaking news. Senator Morrison announces withdrawal from re-election race amid quantum controversy. The announcement played on someone's phone, loud enough to freeze the entire auditorium. Paula had the full story pulled up in seconds. "Holy shit," she breathed. "The financial records your mom exposed, they show Morrison received campaign contributions from Nova Quanta timed exactly with his pushes for research restrictions. The ethics committee is opening a full investigation." I looked back at Graham. He stood frozen, phone pressed to his ear, face draining of color as he presumably heard the same news from the source. "Morrison's done," Sandra said quietly, "and anyone closely associated with him is radioactive, including Keene Buildco's government contracts," Mom finished. She looked at her ex-husband with something between pity and vindication. 20 years of carefully cultivated relationships, gone in an afternoon. Graham's phone clattered to the floor. He stared at me, and for the first time in my life, he looked genuinely lost. "I was trying to protect the family," he said weakly. "No," Mom stepped forward, steel in her voice. "You were trying to protect your ego, your image, your control. The family was just the excuse." The auditorium had gone silent, everyone sensing the personal drama unfolding, but I was done being a spectacle. "This presentation is over," I announced to the room, "but the work continues. Anyone interested in collaboration, please coordinate through Dr. Mercer or the RIT Technology Transfer Office. Thank you all for witnessing history." As people began filing out, chattering excitedly about what they'd seen, I pulled my inner circle aside. "What's our status on the patent?" "Filed and confirmed," Sandra reported. "Priority date locked. Even if Nova Quanta tries to challenge, they'd be fighting 17 witness affidavits, plus the financial trail showing their bad faith." "Speaking of financial trails," Mom added, "I've been contacted by 6 other researchers who think Nova Quanta buried their work. They want to join a class action." "Let them," I said. "It's time someone held these innovation killers accountable." My phone buzzed. An email from the Department of Defense's Quantum Research Division. They wanted to discuss funding, real funding, the kind that built programs, not just prototypes. "Dr. Keene." A young woman approached hesitantly. "I'm Sarah Walsh from MIT News. Could I ask what's next? Where does quantum computing go from here?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Not just the technical challenges extending coherence time, scaling up qubit numbers, developing practical applications. But the human challenges, the Graham Keens and Jasper Whitcombs, who saw innovation as something to control rather than cultivate. What's next is transparency, I told her. Open research, shared protocols, collaborative development. The quantum future can't be built in secret labs or buried in corporate vaults. It needs to be as distributed as the quantum states themselves. And Nova Quanta. I smiled. What's Nova Quanta? By tomorrow, there'll be a cautionary tale about what happens when you try to cage lightning. The real question is who's ready to help build what comes after. As Sarah scribbled notes, I saw Graham approaching again, but this time, Derek was with him. Nat, my brother said quietly, I had no idea it had gone this far. The lawsuit, the senator, I thought it was just Dad being Dad. It was, I replied. That's the problem. I pulled Keen Buildco out of the Nova Quanta deal this morning, he said. Before the presentation, something felt wrong about it all. Looks like I made the right call. I studied my brother, really looked at him for the first time in years. He'd chosen the safe path, the expected path, but maybe he wasn't as locked into it as I'd thought. There's going to be a lot of construction needed, I said carefully. Quantum computing facilities, research centers, manufacturing plants, clean construction, ethical construction. Think Keen Buildco might be interested in pivoting. Hope flickered in his eyes. You'd work with us after everything. Not with him, I glanced at Graham, but with a Keen Buildco that's learned from its mistakes. Maybe, if you can prove you're different. Graham started to speak, but Mom cut him off. You've said enough. Graham, for once in your life, just listen. And miraculously, he did. The war room reconvened an hour later, pizza boxes and champagne bottles covering the conference table. We'd won, but victory felt less like conquering and more like laying foundations for something bigger than any of us. So, Paula raised her glass, to Dr. Natalie Keen, who just kicked quantum computing into the future and took down a patent troll empire as a bonus. To the team, I corrected, and to everyone who's ever had their innovations stolen, suppressed, or dismissed. This is just the beginning. We toasted, and I thought about those 12.7 seconds. Such a small number. But revolutions don't need much time, just enough coherence to show what's possible. And we'd shown them all. The conference room at Stanton, Weiss and Associates, looked like it had been carved from money mahogany table polished to mirror perfection. Leather chairs that cost more than my monthly lab budget, and a view of Rochester that screamed, "We bill by the hour and you'll pay it gladly." 48 hours after the demonstration, the sharks had gathered. Dr. Keen, Richard Stanton himself, was handling this, which told me everything about the stakes. We represent a consortium of interested parties, IBM, Google, Intel, and 2 others who prefer to remain anonymous for now. Let me guess, I said. Paula and Sandra flanking me like intellectual bodyguards. Defense contractors. His poker face flickered. Our clients are prepared to offer $1.2 billion for exclusive licensing rights to your phase-locked photonic lattice technology. Mom, sitting to my right with her forensic accounting ammunition locked and loaded, didn't even blink. We'd wargamed this scenario. Exclusive. I leaned back, channeling every negotiation tactic I'd absorbed from watching Graham over the years, ironic that his teachings would serve me now. That's interesting. Nova Quanta offered exclusive too. How's that working out for them? Through the glass wall, I could see his associates frantically typing. The Nova Quanta comparison had landed exactly as intended. This is entirely different, Stanton insisted. Our clients intend to develop and deploy your technology, not suppress it. Prove it, Sandra interjected. Open the books. Show us the development timeline, the market strategy, the anti-shelving provisions you're willing to accept. That's highly unusual. So is room temperature quantum coherence. I smiled. New paradigms require new rules. The door burst open, a violation of Big Law protocol that had Stanton's face darkening. His assistant looked terrified but determined. Sir, you need to see this. Bloomberg just posted. She thrust a tablet at him. His expression went from annoyed to alarmed to ashen in 3 seconds flat. What? Paula demanded. He turned the tablet toward us. The headline hit like a quantum decoherence event. Nova Quanta Holdings Files, Chapter 11, Bankruptcy Following Mass Investor Exodus. But it was the sub-headline that made my blood sing, Whitcomb arrested on federal charges of technology suppression and market manipulation. Jesus, Mom breathed. That was fast. The SEC doesn't mess around when senators are involved, Sandra noted with satisfaction. Morrison must have flipped on Whitcomb to save himself. Stanton rallied admirably. This just reinforces our position. We're offering legitimate development, not... You're offering a cage with golden bars, I interrupted. Exclusive licensing means you control the pace of development. You decide what applications see market and when. You become the new Nova Quanta, just with better PR. Then what do you want? He dropped the smooth lawyer act, showing genuine frustration. Every innovation needs corporate backing to scale. That's reality. No, I stood, gathering my papers. That's the old reality. We're building a new one. I nodded to Paula, who pulled out our counteroffer not to them, but to the world. The Quantum Coherence Alliance, she announced, sliding the prospectus across the table. Open source-based technology, with commercial licenses for specific applications. Think Linux for quantum computing. Founding members get preferred access and input on development priorities, but no one owns the core innovation. Stanton looked physically pained. That's leaving billions on the table. That's ensuring billions in progress don't get tabled, I corrected. Every university, every startup, every garage inventor gets access to the basic protocols. You want to build commercial applications? Great. Pay for a license and compete on implementation, not on hoarding fundamentals. The clients will never... IBM will, Mom interrupted, showing her homework. They've been pushing open quantum development for years. Google's already got open quantum initiatives. Intel needs this to stay competitive. Your anonymous defense contractors. She smiled. They just want the technology to work. They don't care who else has it, as long as America has it first. Stanton's team huddled, whispering frantically. Through the window, Rochester sprawled below a city built on innovation, from Kodak to Xerox, companies that had ruled the world until they tried to cage the future instead of cultivating it. I need to make some calls, Stanton said finally. Take your time, I replied. But not too much. MIT's offering to host the Alliance launch next week. Stanford wants it the week after. Oh, and the European Quantum Initiative called this morning. They're very interested in ensuring open development standards. The temperature in the room shifted. Suddenly, we weren't supplicants seeking corporate blessing. We were the future, deciding who got to participate. My phone buzzed. Derek, texting from the parking lot. Dad's here. Says he needs 5 minutes. Please. I looked at Mom. She shrugged after 30 years of marriage. She could read Graham's moods from his license plate position. He's desperate, she interpreted, but not dangerous. Probably. 5 minutes, I told Stanton. Family emergency. The elevator ride down felt like descending through years of history. Each floor another layer of father-daughter disappointment. Until I reached the lobby where Graham Keene stood, looking like a man who'd built his life on bedrock only to discover it was sand. Natalie? He didn't try for sweetheart or daughter, just my name, like a white flag. You have 4 minutes and 45 seconds, I said. Talk fast. Keene Build Co. lost 6 contracts this morning. Morrison's scandal tainted everyone in his orbit. 20 years of relationship building, gone. He laughed bitterly. You know what the irony is? The contracts we kept are the ones Derek negotiated. The clean ones. The ones that had nothing to do with my connections. Karma's a quantum bitch, I observed. What do you want, Dad? I want... He struggled. This man who'd never met a sentence he couldn't close. I want to understand, not the physics I know that's beyond me, but how I got it so wrong. How I raised a daughter who could change the world, and all I saw was someone who wouldn't follow the blueprint. For the first time in my adult life, Graham Keene looked genuinely bewildered. Not angry, not dismissive, not calculating, just lost. You want to understand? I checked my phone. 3 minutes left. Here's the executive summary. You confused control with love, confused your dreams with mine, confused building things with building people. I built a company worth... You built a company, I cut him off. Derek and I built ourselves. Despite you, not because of you. Mom built a life around your edges, but you never built a family. You just constructed roles and got mad when we wouldn't play them. He absorbed that like a physical blow. Your mother said something similar, right before she served the divorce papers this morning. I blinked. She what? Said 30 years was enough. Said watching you stand up to me showed her what she should have done decades ago. He smiled ruefully. Said she's got forensic accounting work lined up with 3 firms already. Turns out exposing Nova Quanta's finances made her rather popular in certain circles. Good for her! And I meant it. Elaine Keene was finally becoming Elaine the CPA again. So what now? Graham asked. Derek says you might work with a reformed Keene Build Co. Says there's construction needed for quantum facilities. Maybe, I allowed. But not with you at the helm. It's Derek's company now, or no deal. I could fight that. I still own... You own a company that just lost 6 major contracts with more losses coming, I interrupted. You can retire gracefully with some dignity and assets, or you can fight and watch it all burn. Your choice. My phone buzzed. Time up? I have to go, I said. There's a $1 billion negotiation waiting, and unlike you, I know when to let go of control to gain real power. I turned to leave, then paused. Dad. One piece of advice, Mom's going to be very successful in her new life. If you're smart, you'll negotiate the divorce fairly. If you're not, I smiled. Well, she's got my entire war council on speed dial now. Sandra's been itching to practice family law. I left him there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, and rode the elevator back up to the future. Stanton was waiting with his answer. The consortium agrees to the alliance structure. With modifications, they want preferred board seats and first-look rights on breakthrough applications. Deal, I said, knowing we'd win more than we'd conceded. Paula will handle the details. As we shook hands, sealing a deal that would transform quantum computing from corporate secret to open revolution, I thought about those 12.7 seconds again, how they'd started as a flicker in a basement lab and become a beacon for an entire industry. Dr. Keene, Stanton asked, as we prepared to leave. Off the record, why didn't you take the exclusive deal you could have been set for life? I thought about Graham, about Nova Quanta, about every brilliant idea ever caged for profit. Because revolutions aren't about getting rich, I said. They're about making sure no one can stop the future from arriving. Walking out into the Rochester afternoon, my team around me, my phone buzzing with offers and opportunities, I felt the full weight of what we'd accomplished. Not just the science, but the human victory. We'd proved that brilliance didn't need permission, that innovation couldn't be caged, and that sometimes the best revenge is massive success shared openly with the world. Quantum coherence achieved, in the lab, in the market, and finally, in my life. The signing ceremony was held in the same auditorium where I demonstrated quantum coherence just 1 week earlier, but this time, instead of skeptical physicists and corporate spies, the seats held representatives from 37 universities, 14 tech companies, and 6 governments. The Quantum Coherence Alliance was about to become reality. Before we begin, I spoke into the microphone, hands steady despite the magnitude of the moment. I want to acknowledge someone who couldn't be here today. Jasper Whitcomb is currently explaining to federal prosecutors how he systematically buried innovations that could have advanced humanity by decades. His empty seat represents every breakthrough that almost didn't happen, every inventor who almost gave up, every future that was almost stolen. The cameras captured it all, MIT's president signing first, followed by Stanford, Caltech, Oxford, the Chinese Academy of Sciences, even IBM's CEO, who'd flown in personally after their board overruled Stanton's exclusive licensing push. "The age of innovation hoarding ends today," he declared while signing. "IBM commits to open quantum development." One by one, they signed, each signature a commitment to shared progress, to building on each other's work instead of burying it. The document itself was a masterpiece of legal engineering, Sandra's finest work protecting the core technology while encouraging commercial development. Derek signed for the newly restructured Keen Construction, now Keen Quantum Infrastructure. He'd taken over as CEO that morning, with Graham's resignation, to pursue other interests. Translation: to salvage what he could from the Morrison scandal's fallout. "Proud of you, sis," Derek whispered as he passed. "Sorry it took me so long to see it." Mom signed as CEO of her new forensic accounting firm, already hired by 3 universities to audit their industry partnerships. She wore the same suit she'd worn to that fateful Sunday dinner. But everything else about her radiated change. Paula signed for RIT's Technology Transfer Office, having been promoted to director after her handling of the quantum crisis. Hollis signed as the Alliance's chief scientific advisor. His retirement postponed indefinitely because, as he put it, why garden when you can grow the future? Then came the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Graham Keen walked onto the stage. The room tensed. He wasn't supposed to be here, wasn't invited. But security hadn't stopped him, maybe because he looked so different. The commanding presence was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before: humility. "I'm not here to sign anything," he said quietly into the microphone. "I don't deserve to, but I needed to say something." I started to stand, to stop him, but Mom caught my arm. "Let him," she murmured. "He needs this." 30 years ago, Graham continued, I held my daughter for the first time. She was so small, so perfect. I promised I'd build her an empire. He looked directly at me. I never asked if she wanted one. I never noticed she was building something better, a revolution. The room was silent. 800 people holding their breath. "Natalie, I failed you as a father. I tried to make you small enough to fit in my world instead of expanding my world to encompass your brilliance. That ends today." He pulled out a document. "I'm establishing the Keen Family Foundation for Quantum Research. Initial funding $50 million, not to control, not to direct, just to support. The board will be entirely independent academics. I won't even have a vote." He set the paper on the signing table and walked away, stopping only to say quietly, "I'm proud of you, 32 years late, but I'm proud of you." Then he was gone, leaving me standing there with tears I refused to let fall and a document worth $50 million in quantum futures. "Well," I managed, voice only slightly shaky, "that was unexpected, but the Alliance is built on second chances and open development. If Graham Keen can learn new tricks, maybe there's hope for all of us." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension. The rest of the signatures proceeded smoothly. By noon, the Quantum Coherence Alliance was official. By 12:07, we'd timed it deliberately. The base protocols went live online. Free, open, available to anyone with the knowledge to use them. My phone immediately exploded with notifications. Downloads from Tehran, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, Lagos, graduate students, garage inventors, high school science clubs, all suddenly able to experiment with room-temperature quantum coherence. "You realize what you've done," the representative from the Department of Defense asked during the reception. "You've democratized one of the most powerful technologies ever discovered." "Exactly," I replied, accepting a champagne glass from a passing waiter. "Nova Quanta could bury one inventor. They can't bury 10,000. Innovation is like quantum states. It wants to be distributed, not contained." 3 months later, I stood in my new lab at the MIT-based Alliance headquarters. Not a basement this time, but a sun-filled space with equipment that would have made my RET setup weep with envy. On the walls, printouts of breakthrough papers from Alliance members' extended coherence times from Tokyo, novel error correction from Berlin, practical applications from a 16-year-old in Bangladesh. Regrets, Paula asked, visiting from Rochester where she now ran the most successful tech transfer program in the country. About not taking the billion personally. I laughed. Look at this. 43 patents filed last month alone, all building on the open protocols. The collective value is already past 10 billion, and that's just the beginning. I meant about your dad. I considered it. Graham and I had managed 2 civil conversations since the signing. He was in therapy court-mandated after some questionable decisions during the Morrison mess, but he seemed to be taking it seriously. We'd never have the father-daughter relationship hallmark sold, but maybe we could build something real on the ruins of his empire. No regrets, I decided. You can't change the past. You can only make sure the future is different. My computer chimed. New email from a high school student in Ohio not far from Granite Falls. Actually, she'd achieved 18 seconds of coherence using a simplified version of our protocol and equipment she'd cobbled together from electronic surplus. Dear Dr. Keene, her email read, everyone said I was wasting my time on physics, said girls from small towns don't become scientists, but I saw your demonstration online, read about your story. If you could do it, maybe I can too. P.S. I'm entering the science fair with this. Think you could come judge? I promise it's worth your time. I smiled, remembering a 7-year-old girl whose father couldn't be bothered to show up. Time to break that cycle. Tell the Alliance Board I need next Thursday off. I told Paula. I have a science fair to judge. Because that's what real revolution looks like. Not just breakthrough technology or billion-dollar deals or corporate titans brought low. It's a girl in small-town Ohio realizing she doesn't need anyone's permission to change the world. 12.7 seconds of quantum coherence had started in a basement lab. Now it lived in thousands of labs, classrooms, and garage workshops around the world, each implementation a finger in the eye of everyone who'd ever tried to cage lightning, bury brilliance, or make innovators beg for scraps from power's table. My name is Natalie Keene. I refuse to sign their papers, refuse to shrink my dreams, refuse to let them bury the future. And in the end, that refusal was worth more than all the exclusive billions they'd tried to buy me with. The quantum age had arrived. Open source, open access, open future. No signatures required except the ones we chose to give. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought about Natalie's quantum revolution. Did her father's last-minute redemption feel earned? Would you have taken the billion-dollar exclusive deal or chosen the open-source path? I'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with fellow dreamers and rebels around the world. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. And if you really want to help more people discover stories about brilliant women changing the world, hit that hype button. It makes a huge difference in getting these tales out there. Until next time, keep questioning, keep building, and never let anyone make your dreams smaller than your potential.